Hello and welcome to our first video dealing with Nigeria. We're going to be talking about topic 4, political institutions. Alright, so first thing we'll talk about is linkage institutions. In Nigeria, most of these linkage institutions are new and not fully developed. Political parties are regionally and ethnically based, and they share a common trait with Russia that they generally form around individuals, and they kind of match up with those ethnic and religious cleavages. There are two major parties that exist in Nigeria, and again, the party system is very weak, and the parties seem to coalesce and disappear as we get closer to elections. The PDP, the People's Democratic Party, is definitely the most long-lasting and the most common party. It's the current party in power with both the presidency and both the Senate and the House. It's Goodluck Jonathan's party. The Congress for Progressive Change Party was founded in 2009, so again, a more recent development. And it's a party of a former leader that revolves around a former leader of Muhammadu Buhari. Election procedures in Nigeria. Presidential elections are a direct popular vote, but you do need a majority to win, so they will go to a second ballot if no majority is reached in the first election, very similar to Iran. Presidents must receive 25% of all of the votes cast in 2/3 of all of the states in Nigeria. Again, purely regional candidates really can't win the presidency of Nigeria. This is another great example of an effort in Nigeria to try to incorporate the differences between North and South and all of the other ethnic groups in the country. Again, this is something really special to Nigeria. The Senate consists of 109 senators. There are 3 of these senators from each of the 36 states, and there's also 1 senator that represents the capital of Abuja. The House of Representatives has 360 members, and they're elected through single-member districts, and this is by plurality, just like the American system. So it's the most votes win, not necessarily a majority. The People's Democratic Party currently holds a majority in both houses and the presidency. All right, the Independent National Election Commission was created to help legitimize the Nigerian election process. So again, it was created to try to make things free and fair in those democratic elections in Nigeria. Again, a checkered past, and its history, really the darkest point in its history was back in 2007. That election that elected Yar'Adua to the presidency is characterized as one of the worst, filled with corruption. But from that point, the kind of positive that comes out of that is that this group, this INEC, has now become very proactive and supported by the government to clean up the election process, to make it more transparent. They've come up with a couple different changes that have made improvements already. The 2011 elections and the most recent presidential elections were both viewed by the international community as free and fair. Same-day registration, local results verification, allowing those voters to stay at the polling places while the ballots are being counted, and also cleaning up voting rolls, eliminating people who are not citizens, and some of the bloat that had led to some of those corrupt elections. Our election fraud, again, significant process, 2011 big improvements, and in that 2011 election, Goodluck Jonathan won 53% of the vote, and Buhari from the north, 32% of the vote. Goodluck Jonathan did not win one of the 12 northernmost states out of the 36, and Buhari did not win more than 25% in any of the southernmost states. So again, even though these candidates meet that minimum criteria, they're not crossing over and appealing to the whole country. After Goodluck Jonathan's election, there were riots in the north, some fires, murders, so things weren't accepted. His election was not accepted totally by the country. Interest groups in Nigeria. Interest groups have and continue to play a role in Nigerian politics. Again, Nigeria does have a civil society. Most of this is a leftover from Britain's time in power prior to 1960. And again, interest groups do have some power, even with all the prebendalism or that very, very ingrained patron-client system that exists. Most of these interest groups are going to revolve around their religions. They're either Muslim or Christian. And again, there are some special interest or social interest groups also. Labor unions also exist in Nigeria. They still have some influence. They still can organize. Back in 2007, they actually organized a pretty successful strike against a general strike against the rise or elimination of some gas subsidies. So again, interest groups do exist in Nigeria, and they can exert some influence. The media in Nigeria is free and fair. It is very well developed. Again, another carryover from the time that Britain was in control of Nigeria. Again, when we look at the countries we've studied recently, if we look at Iran, if we look at Russia, we look at China, Nigeria has open, free press. Its media reflects the ethnic interests of the different parts of the country. Most of those big media outlets are found in the South, and they actually focus on Southern news. Radio is the one unifying communication in Nigeria. It reaches the entire country. Almost actually all 36 states in Nigeria have their own radio stations. Television and newspapers are much more common in the urban areas and more common in the South. The government is a federal system in theory. Again, we talked about this in class. It's a broken federal system. It doesn't really work. The checks and balances between the different branches of government don't work very well and aren't exercised. This is mainly because the state and local governments are 100% dependent on the central government for everything. Again, that oil money has to make its way through the central government down to the states. They use a presidential model. Previously, at the beginning of the country, they used a parliamentary system, but that didn't work very well. We discussed that in class. So they've transitioned to a presidential model, and they use a 4 years per term, 2-term limit. In Nigeria, we've seen a revolving door of democratic and military rule over time, but the key kind of unifying factor here is that each of these positions, president, military dictator, whatever it might be, are supported by a very intricate system of patronage, that prebendalism. All right, the bureaucracy, corrupt. It does create an opportunity for some upward mobility, creates a middle class in Nigeria, but the system is very inefficient. Jobs are awarded through that patron-client system, kind of like the patronage system of the old U.S. government prior to the civil service reforms. And bribery is institutionalized. It's part of the system. Again, corruption has been institutionalized in Nigeria, and the fact that if you're going to do business in Nigeria, you have to understand that corruption and bribery are going to be part of the equation. State corporatism. Again, Nigeria doesn't have plurality where you have openness and open communication between the different groups and open market. They basically have something called parastatals. These parastatals are corporations that are designed to provide specific services, social welfare, things like water, electricity. Technically, they are privately owned, but their boards are made up of government ministers, and their leadership is connected to the president or the military leader's patron-client network. And these parastatals are kind of like state-owned, but state-owned light, let's put it that way. Entities serve as contact points, or they are the way the government deals with the general public. All right, so it is state corporatism, but it's a little different, okay, in terms of these parastatals. Generally, these are poorly run, poorly managed, inefficient, and of course corrupt. All right, the legislature, we have a House and the Senate. They have both offices, both bodies have 4-year terms, and they are renewable. Again, there are no term limits. You'll see there from my numbers, 13 of 360 are women, 4 of 109 are women in the Senate side. It's one of the lowest percentages in the developing world, in particular a country that is a democracy. The legislature is filled with corruption. They've been largely ineffective through all of the different variations of the republics through the years. But there is a little bit of evidence, a little bit of a shining light that they are becoming a little more comfortable with attempting to try to check power on that powerful president at the top of the Nigerian system. And they've really had zero role when military rule has been in charge. All right, the judiciary, the rule of law survived into the new Nigeria after Britain left, so those traditions are maintained. But military rule really destroyed a great deal of the rule of law. Judicial review does exist in theory in Nigeria. They do have a Supreme Court, but it doesn't really practice its authority to overturn laws passed by the legislature or actions taken by the president. The court systems are still modeled on the British system, and in a lot of cases they work side by side with Sharia courts, in particular moving as you move farther and farther north. When you get to the utmost northern areas of Nigeria, Islamic law, Sharia law is going to be the main law and the focus. All right, the military has been a very strong political force in Nigeria's history. You guys all know how many different coups have taken place where military leaders have knocked off democratic government, where they've knocked each other off. So again, a real political force. If you're going to have power, if you're going to maintain power, the military is definitely going to be in your corner. They have blocked democratic reform in times where the military has been in control, but they've also opened the door for civilian control and others. The military provides a unifying factor. Nigerians from all over the country will join. Different ethnicities, religions, they all are going to join the military together. The best and the brightest join the Nigerian military. It also is a ladder of social mobility, so you can improve yourself by joining the military. All right, that's a quick snapshot of Nigerian political institutions. Make sure that you finish up with the Google form.